Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Hope you guys all had a Merry Christmas. And today we're going to be reviewing the PlayStation 5 Slim Edition in 2025, or late 2024, technically. Just figured I'd put that there because it's essentially 2025, so that'll hold up in time better. But yeah, so today we're going to be giving a review and giving my honest opinions about the PlayStation 5, particularly the Slim Edition, as that's kind of the model they're currently on at the moment. The original PlayStation 5 that launched, several years ago at this point, actually, doesn't feel like it's been that long, but it has, isn't really being sold much anymore or at all from what I can tell. Of course, you can always, if you already have one, you already have one, but or if you get one in a secondhand market, you can probably pretty easily pick one up. But from what I've seen, especially in most retail stores, like if you go to Target or you go to Best Buy or something like that, to buy a console physically in person, especially, but even on most online retailers, it would seem, are selling the Slim Edition as like the main flagship console now. From what I understand, the PlayStation 5 like original has kind of been phased out for the most part. So if you're getting a PlayStation 5 now, if you've gotten one recently, you're getting one in the future, you're most likely, and like I'm talking about the base edition, you're most likely going to be getting the Slim Edition. And just to kind of cover the main differences of the PlayStation 5 Slim to the original PlayStation 5, the main difference is really just, it's kind of in the name, it is the size. The uh the size difference, it says it's about 30%, slimmer or smaller, like overall, than the original PlayStation 5. I'm not entirely sure if that claim was made for the disk drive version or the Slim or the diskless or both. But that's the main feature is it's about 30% smaller. And I have one here, obviously. This is the back of it, but this is what the PlayStation 5, I don't know, this is kind of just my body for scale in my hand, but this is what the PlayStation 5 looks like sitting, horizontally, obviously. I don't have a vertical stand for this. It's not how I prefer to play it. This is the PlayStation 5 Slim. Uh, and if you look at the side-by-side comparison, which I don't have, but if you look one up, the comparison, it is smaller with or without the disk drive if you compare it to its, equivalent version of the original PlayStation 5. It is smaller. 30% does sound about right. And it is definitely noticeable. But I don't see a lot of situations where it's a massive kind of space saver. It's definitely nice to have. It's definitely, packaging something like this into a smaller package is appreciated just to save space in general, of course. And if it, doesn't cut back on performance, which it doesn't obviously, it's still good. But it's not the difference between an Xbox Series S and an Xbox Series X, which obviously they're two very different shapes. So while the X is much more, large and kind of obtuse and everything, they're two different shapes. So the size differential isn't as apparent, obviously, unless you could like mold a Series X down into the rectangular horizontal shape of a Series S. But regardless, this main difference between the PlayStation 5 and the PlayStation 5 Slim Edition that they've kind of moved to as their flagship model is the about 30% reduction in size, which is nice. Apart from the, technology in it and the graphics, it doesn't really seem like there's much of a. It's not like going to a PlayStation 5 Pro or anything, which we'll get to that in a second. Might even, you know, there's a lot to say on that, but it's not like this is a Pro edition or supposed to be a Pro edition or anything. It's supposed to be basically the same thing but smaller as the original PlayStation 5, and it does that very well. From everything again, I don't have an original PlayStation 5, but from everything I've heard or seen, the performance is very comparable and it's basically the same thing. I mean, the PlayStation 5 Slims are newer and you're going to be getting a newer console, so that might affect it, give it a little edge over the original PlayStation 5, but that's about it for that. The other main feature, I believe, is the PlayStation 5 Slim comes disc drive or disc driveless like the original PlayStation 5, but the disk drive on the PlayStation 5 Slim is attachable and detachable. It is not integrated into the PlayStation 5 like the original version, I believe is. Don't quote me on that if I'm getting this all wrong. But regardless, you can buy a separate disc. Like if you get the discless version of the PlayStation 5 Slim, you can buy a separate, which I think believe is $80. It's kind of steep, but so you're better off just getting it in, with the package if you want it in the first place. But you can buy a separate disk drive to attach to a diskless or disk driveless PlayStation 5 Slim if you want that later, which I don't believe was an option for the original PlayStation 5 series. That is a nice feature. It's always good to have options, of course. The one main thing that people kind of harped on with that though is for the PlayStation 5 Slim. Since it's not an integrated disk drive, it's connected and like hooked up and kind of clap or clipped on kind of accessory almost is for the disk drive to initially set up, of course, and install and have firm or have software updates and stuff like that. I believe you need to be connected to the internet to actually download that. So it's kind of weird to have need like an internet connection for a disk drive basically to set it up and then upgrade it and everything, which is kind of, I mean, for most people in a lot of areas of the world, like North America and stuff like that, that are heavy, big markets for this, that's not a huge issue. Most people in those areas, in my area, have PlayStation 5 or have internet to connect their gaming consoles to pretty reliably, even if it's not the fastest internet. But if you're in a place where that's not the case, you might want to take that in consideration. Um, so yeah, those are the main differences between the two editions there. And now that we've covered that, I'm just going to give you some kind of overview of the entire PlayStation 5 and the whole ecosystem, as well as everything that comes with it. So just coming off the bat, this is the box it comes in. Trying to get that in frame here. Obviously, this is a bundle deal, and I got this. This is a bundle deal that I can't remember. I don't know how long they've been running this, but this is just personally the one that I picked up because there's an option to get a bundle deal or not. But I mean, I don't really. I'm not a huge Fortnite guy, but I'm not going to turn down free stuff type of thing. Um, that's the box it comes in. What it comes with, obviously, the console itself. What I've shown off. It comes with your power supply and HDMI, of course. It comes with your one PS5 the old DualShock controller there, obviously wireless and plug it in and it comes with a charging cable for that, of course. And then one thing I want to note about this, which I kind of mentioned about the stands and stuff, this doesn't stand vertically right out of the box. That's another difference I forgot to mention between the packaging of the PlayStation 5 and the PlayStation 5 Slim is the fact that this does not come with a vertical stand out of the box. You have the option to buy one for, I want to say like $30, maybe even more, knowing PlayStation. You have the option to buy that to turn it vertically, but it comes just without that. And as you can see, it has two plastic legs right there put into the bottom there of the disk drive so that it can sit vertically, but it's not hugely lopsided, with the disk drive being at the bottom there. So that's how it stands basically, and that's I think the last of the difference. So I don't miss that again. But yeah, that's what it comes with basically is the controller, the consoles, the connections, the charging cable, of course, the console itself, and the stands that allow you to play it vertically without having to buy like a vertical stand separately after you already bought a console or something. So that's everything that comes in the box, and that was the box. Great packaging as usual. I'm a big like unboxing guy and kind of packaging guy and display guy. So if it comes with, cool packaging and stuff like that, I appreciate that, of course. So moving on from the box, before we get into the console, I just wanted to, hit a smaller bird here with the controller, the new PlayStation 5 controllers. I do actually have a PlayStation 4 controller that I forgot to bring in here to do a side by side. But you can obviously look that up, or if you know what I'm talking about, most people do. This is a lot different, not just in, the color scheme or the look or anything, or I guess the look, but not just in the color scheme, but obviously the size and overall design of the controller is much different than a lot of past PlayStation controllers. Obviously, the main thing is it's a lot heftier of a controller. Uh, Noticeably, obviously, the main kind of center portion of the controller is much larger, and the hand grips on the side are much thicker around. than the PlayStation 4 controllers were. I know I've used both, so I know this, and especially if you're a person with, big or even just like medium-sized hands, to be completely honest, this is a much appreciated upgrade from past PlayStation controllers because one of my biggest gripes with past PlayStation, like DualSense or DualShock controllers or whatever, they are small, especially the grips on the side. And if you have big hands or even medium-sized hands, you kind of just swallow the grips in the controller as a whole, honestly. This is, in my opinion, obviously I haven't used every single PlayStation iteration controller, everything they've ever came out with. But from what I've seen and what I've used, this is by far and away the best PlayStation controller they have made. Now, if you have small hands, I really don't think, because it's not as bulky as an Xbox controller or some Xbox controllers, but it is still it's a great upgrade in, size that really makes you feel like you're holding a solid controller, unlike the last series of the PlayStation, last generation, I mean. And it is great. I love that they kind of, I don't want to say copy, but moved. I mean, let's call it what it is though. But kind of moved more in the direction of a PlayStation or an Xbox One controller design. And in my opinion, I mean, Xbox has always knocked it out of the park with their controller design, in my opinion. And if you can't beat them, join them. So that's kind of what they did. It seems like it is great. I love the color design of it. It kind of looks like the PlayStation 5. It's kind of the whole point with the color scheme and the layout. Obviously, the button layout's pretty similar to most PlayStation 5 controllers. You've got the two, joysticks down here, the, you know, square, X, all the symbols, letter symbol, shape symbols. You've got your, directional pad here. You've got your PlayStation 5 home button. It's kind of hard to see there, but it's there. You've got obviously your lights that indicate whether it's on or resting or whatever. You've got on the side here, that's kind of like your menu button, and then this is kind of your media button on the other side here. That is essentially supposed to kind of capture stuff. I guess it's your media button, and then obviously the main kind of middle display. This is, in my opinion, what majorly separates it from an Xbox controller, apart from some other, cosmetic differences. Essentially, is the big trackpad in the middle, which yes does work as a trackpad. Some games allow you to essentially like move your hand around this and it tracks your motion. Noticeably, this is a cool feature that is something that Xbox doesn't have, and I'll definitely take on a controller, especially when it's this well designed. It's definitely a leg up on an Xbox controller. But most games don't tend to actually utilize the trackpad at all. Games that you'll see utilize it a lot are something like Astrobot or Astrobot's Playground, which is essentially like the tech demo game that comes bundled with the PlayStation 5. Those games, since they're first party games and, they're kind of PlayStation logo and advertisement games essentially, they use a lot more of that niche stuff like that, so you'll get more use out of it. But in general, that's kind of just the deal. It's not very utilized in most games. Obviously, you've got the charging port because it's wireless that can plugged into play while it's charging or charged, separately, obviously. You've got your headset connections in the middle back there. And then another feature, of course, you can maybe see the little audio holes there. It serves as both it serves as essentially a headset. It audio in and audio out. So it's a microphone and produces audio so you can hear and talk to people all through your controller, which is, as a guy, I'm not gonna lie about my allegiances here. I've always kind of been an Xbox guy. That's a really cool feature that you basically have a headset built into your microphone if you don't have the money or don't want to buy your own headset to talk and hear people. That's a really cool feature that comes bundled in with these. These controllers, though, I will say, I haven't looked at the Xbox controller pricing much, but these controllers, of course, are expensive. They're not cheap. Obviously, you get one for free, included with the console, but these aren't cheap if you want to buy one or two or three or more to play with other people. But it is what it is. It's a great controller, anyways. In my opinion, probably the best controller on the market right now, like first party, of course. Then, of course, the last thing you got your bumpers and your triggers here. The thing with the triggers, which I believe was a feature in a lot of, I can't remember how far back the haptic and the resistive triggers goes back, but they do have resistive triggers just like on the PlayStation VR 2 and some PlayStation 4, I believe. These things, of course, you can of course just click them regularly, and everything feels great when you press and move everything. There's no problems with that, and it hasn't been so far. But the resistive triggers is something that is huge for me. Playing that with, again, Astrobot, stuff like that, or just games that utilize the resistive triggers to make it harder or easier to press these and do stuff makes the immersion better, and it feels great to kind of sync up with your game like that, essentially. So that's a really cool feature that I enjoy quite a bit. And lastly, the haptics. Obviously, the vibration, the resistive triggers, stuff like that, and the audio feedback from the microphone and everything that's built into the controller. The haptics on this are the best haptics I've ever used in any controller, whether it be past PlayStation controllers or Xbox controllers. Obviously, there's more of an immersive, kind of style and goal here with the PlayStation controller than there is on Xbox. Xbox has vibration, but doesn't really have any haptic feedback past that. There's no resistive triggers, there's no trackpad or microphone. So they obviously kind of hone in on that more at Sony, but it's much better than the Xbox haptics, and it's a lot cooler. So definitely a feature I'll take. And I really love this controller. Is basically what I'm saying. Now to the console itself. Just going over this again. It comes with a little peg legs to sit it horizontally. You can buy a thing to make it sit vertically. Up to you. This is the disk drive version. Is the one I have. This one is This is a disk drive version. This one is the one that it came with the disk drive. I didn't have to install this, but this is what it looks like, kind of both ways here. Not particularly big as mentioned. It's a little slimmer than the original version. And as far as the connections go on this, which I believe are the same as the PlayStation 5, obviously you have a disk drive. You've got in the front here, you've got two USB to C connections for charging or PlayStation VR. You've got your power button here, which is a physical button you have to press, unlike some past generation consoles. In the back, of course, you've got your HDMI cable. You've got your USB ports. You've got your Ethernet connection there to LAN, and you've got your power supply down there at the bottom. Those are the connections it comes with. Obviously, you can always buy adapters and extenders. And then the console itself, as you can see, is split into two panels here. There's a panel one on the bottom here. This has more, they're both the same color, of course, unless you change them out, which they're working on getting more support for that for the Slim. This is more of a matte feel. Um, like, this is more of a matte white feel, and the top is more of a glossy kind of white feel. They're both the same color, of course. It's gloss and matte, but I like the difference of textures. I prefer the gloss, of course, but just personally, but I like the difference in textures. I like the kind of design and the slit in the middle, the fans and the port. It's a nice looking console. Of course, there's lights for rest mode and power on, of course, that add to the display as well. I personally like the design of the console. I think it looks pretty nice. So props for that. As far as performance, again, this is a powerful console. I believe the specs are for gaming, of course, not watching movies or still images, of course. It is 4K at 120 hertz, and that is what it's, capable of running at games. Obviously, kind of the elephant in the room here. It's not the most powerful PlayStation technically, and with the recent release of the Pro, and it's not as powerful as the Series X, but it is more powerful than the Series S. So it's not the most powerful console on the market, but trust me, when you factor in both price as far as those other consoles, as well as the upgrade you're getting with those other consoles, in my opinion, I'm really talking about the PlayStation 5 Pro here. It is not worth spending the extra money to go to the upgrade to the Pro in any way whatsoever, unless you just have money you want to burn, and you're a tech guy and like having everything for some reason. In that case, it might be worth it for you, but for 99% of people, either upgrading to the Pro if you already have a PlayStation 5, or buying a Pro outright as your first PlayStation 5 over this is a waste of about what are the differences? $200 I think when they're both full price, not discounted on holidays. Um, and yeah, this console's performance is fantastic for what it is. I don't have some 8K 500 hertz a second TV or anything crazy, but it's a big TV with a nice display and it runs games beautifully. I have trouble kind of noticing a huge difference between my Series X and my PlayStation 5 Slim. Although I'm not a huge stickler for graphics as long as it's passable and more, and both are more than passable. So I don't really nitpick and look for that stuff as well. But it runs fine, it looks fine, it runs very quietly. No game, whether it's in VR or flat screen, has like had the fans sounding like there was a jet engine in my house or anything. It has ran quite well, quite quietly. The graphics are great. It's a very capable and powerful console. So tech specs wise, it is more than passable and great, especially for the price. Whether you buy it full, which I believe is $500 or so, depending on which edition you get, or you get it at a holiday bundle price for about 375 or 425, depending on the version you get right now. So yeah, it's a great console, more than powerful. It's not as powerful as the Series X on the competitive side, but again, we'll get to that in another video probably. But it's very passable. Um, it's you won't notice much of a difference at all, and it's considerably cheaper than the new PlayStation 5 Pro that released for $700, which is absurd to say out loud. And not only that, the PlayStation 5 Pro claims to have better graphics, but as you may have seen from some other YouTube videos, the upgrade is as minimal as upgrades get for releasing an entirely new console for it. There is supposed to be some upgraded GPUs and ray tracing or whatever, the PlayStation, I can't remember, something super or whatever, but they've done videos of, and on paper it is a more powerful console for more money, of course, but on they've done videos of people side by side comparing it, showing the differences or so. It is not. It is there's just not a difference there to warrant a $200 price increase or to upgrade to that at all if you already have a PlayStation 5 in my opinion. It is not worth it. I can do a whole video on the PlayStation 5 and I'd keep rambling on forever, but do not buy a PlayStation 5, do not upgrade to a PlayStation 5. Get a Slim, get the original, get the base, flagship PlayStation 5 and go from there. So, now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk about games and support for it, which is obviously kind of the main thing when you buy a gaming console. Of course, the support is great. It is Sony's kind of flagship first generation or current gen console, so it's gonna have a lot of support. Obviously, it has a lot of accessories, of course, like the PlayStation Portal or the PlayStation VR 2, which I did a video on recently. I mean, it's got the full attention of Sony, of course. So no worries there. As far as timeline, I know I put 2025 in the review thumbnail for a reason. Yes, it's been a bit since the original PlayStation 5 was announced and released, but I wouldn't worry about like, oh, I buy this right now, and then at the end of 2025 they just released, the PlayStation 6. The timeline is obviously at this point still kind of rumors and kind of conjecture and theories, but you're gonna have a while with this console, so don't fret about I'm gonna buy this and then next year they're gonna release a new better console and new generation. I'm gonna be stuck with this. I only get a year use out of it at the current generation. It's not. They don't have a plan to release the PlayStation 6 announced at this point, obviously, or any rumors about it being soon, with even in the next few years. And they just released the PlayStation 5 Pro, so they're obviously not looking to move on from this generation really anytime soon. So you'll get more than enough use out of it if you, especially if you buy soon, to just more than justify your purchase of it as a current gen console. So that's fine there. There's nothing to really worry about in that regard. And then obviously games of exclusives have always kind of been the major selling point for PlayStation, particularly over an Xbox, of course. You've got franchises like God of War, Spider-Man, The Last of Us, Horizon Zero Dawn series. I mean, Yeah, no, Astrobot now is essentially kind of like a Mario Odyssey killer. I mean, you've got PlayStation has always kind of thrived off of its exclusives and it offering like early releases and stuff or like this is the place to play for a lot of this. Of course, that is being challenged by kind of Xbox here recently with they bought Bethesda, they bought Activision Blizzard. They've got these big companies that they bought and, are mainly for them or on Game Pass. That is true, but at the same time, they don't have a lot of the main like exclusives that have always been kind of system sellers for Sony in the PlayStation 4 and 5 and backwards, of course. So obviously, if those exclusives are something you want to play and you don't have, PlayStation or PC for some of them, as a lot of times they get ported to PC, but we're just talking about console gaming right now because I know that's either not the preferred place to play for a lot of people or out of the budget for a lot of people, given the pretty major price differences, about double. It's usually about $1,000 is what they say for a gaming PC compared to like even at full price off of sale 500 for the PlayStation 5, the version you should get anyways. Um, but yeah, it's about as far as games, they've always had some of the best exclusives, especially when it comes to like single player, like story driven or RPG games. It's not even close, unfortunately, compared to the Xbox. So they got a lot of great first party games, and of course they have a lot of great, I guess not first party or third party games or games that have been ported over to them. Because even though Activision Blizzard was bought, and even though Bethesda was bought, you can still find all of their titles, all their main titles that are available on consoles on both the Xbox and PlayStation 5. Microsoft hasn't really cut that, connection like Sony would probably do if they bought those companies. They're still available on both platforms, so there's no worry about not being able to play COD or something like that on either console at the moment. And yeah, so fantastic catalog of games. Of course, these days you're really able to play a lot of them on PC, which is something to take into consideration if you have that or you're looking to get into that. Or PC might honestly, aside from sports games, in my opinion, because console is always better for sports games and even sometimes shooters, depending on how you like to play that. PC kind of is the best of all worlds when it comes to games like that, but we're talking about console gaming here. PlayStation 5 has the better exclusives and still has a lot of those third party games or games that Microsoft directly owns now on their systems. So the game library is quite impressive and quite expansive. So no worries there whatsoever. Now the last kind of thing for the games is Game Pass versus PlayStation Plus. Those are the two from Xbox and PlayStation. Those are the two kind of both online services as well as kind of game service, monthly subscriptions. Essentially, both do the same thing. You pay a monthly fee that ranges from anywhere from like $10 to like around $20 is for the ultimate or the premium of, respectively for those two services. They give you online play and they give you a monthly catalog of games, some of which you can keep and own for that month, and some of which are just, there for a certain period of time, whether it's a month or several months or years, that you can download and play, but you don't own, but you have access to them as long as you have the service, of course. And of course, I don't think it's any secret here. I'm not sponsored by anybody, by the way, when I make these comparisons or say anything, as you can probably tell from my channel size as well as what I do. But it's no secret here that Xbox Game Pass is a better service than PlayStation Plus at this point. PlayStation Plus is a fine service, and if you play on PlayStation, don't let that be the deciding factor about which console to buy, which brand or part of the console war to be loyal to. But Game Pass is a great service, and there's no problem claiming second fiddle to them. It's still better than Nintendo Online, so it's not last place. But yeah, PlayStation Plus is a pretty solid service overall. It gives you online play, obviously, and that gives you a catalog of games. A few games that you can keep to own for a few months, I believe, every month, I believe. That are sometimes decent titles, actually, and a pretty expansive catalog of, PlayStation 5 games that you can play and download while you have the service, which is nice. It's not as expansive, but it's still fairly good and has some solid games that you might want to play on there. Obviously, there's also, if you have the premium version, there is the classic hits. So if you're kind of a person who, I guess, likes to play older games, especially if you don't have physical copies of them to put into a disk drive, if you have that or want that, it lets you play older PlayStation games from, past generation consoles. Basically, that's, it's an upgraded, library of Game Pass or PlayStation Plus games if you upgrade to that version. They have some other features like cloud features and some movie credits if you have, premium and stuff like that. But that's the main meat and potatoes of the services. And yeah, it's both are fine services, but obviously PlayStation Plus is maybe a little inferior or smaller, especially with Microsoft's recent purchases of companies, of course. But yeah, it's a it's a fine service, especially if you play online a lot in PlayStation. So yeah, it's a good service. Obviously, there's for both. You also get discounts if you want to buy certain games, to own permanently digitally. So yeah, that's a nice added feature as well. I think PlayStation Plus is a fine service. I think it's pretty solid for a heavy PlayStation user who plays online a lot, especially. It's a good service. So yeah, the games and support for this are, as expected, kind of fantastic. Being the flagship console of Sony. So yeah, I don't know. That's kind of wraps up my thoughts on the PlayStation 5 Slim Edition in 2025. Overall, just kind of reiterate and wrap everything up here. It's a great console, both in the games and sports, both with the tech, both for the price. It's a solid console. It's current gen console. You won't have to worry about something surpassing it or upending it. Basically, with a new generation or anything anytime soon, and a PlayStation 5 Pro definitely isn't doing that anytime soon. It's a great console to buy right now, especially on sale this time of year if you can still get it on sale for a bundle maybe. So yeah, the controller is great. I think they did a great job with that. The tech is great inside there. It runs great. It runs quietly. Having owned both, side of the console wars, these consoles are very comparable graphics wise, and I think their controller's even a little better. Obviously, this is, a great way. I'm a PC gamer, as you can see in the back, and of course, I'm filming this on a laptop. Um, as far as consoles, though, I mean, this is a great place to play sports games or shooters, in my opinion. It's more casual, kind of relaxed atmosphere than playing on PC where you have to build one your own maybe, or have to upgrade certain parts and switch stuff out and handle all that annoying stuff. It's very much console. That's a big selling point on console gaming and always has been is kind of how relaxed and casual it is compared to PC gaming. Um, so yeah, I think it's a great console. Not technically the most powerful console, but I'd say it's probably second or third, and you won't really notice a major difference between those other two. And obviously, I don't think it's not big enough to make a decision off of that, but it is a more than capable and for a while future-proof console that can play all of your favorite PlayStation exclusive games or any other third-party games you want to play just fine. And yeah, it's a great console. It's a great looking console. That's kind of the wrap up of the review there. So yeah, let me know what you guys kind of think about your PlayStation 5. Any questions, anything in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe. And out of 10, of course, I wasn't gonna leave you guys hanging. Out of 10, the review for the PlayStation 5 Slim edition in 2025 is a 9 out of 10. And yeah, hope you guys had a Merry Christmas. Hope you guys are all having great New Year's, and I'll see you guys later.